Anyway.
We still are looking in Nigeria and talking about the fuel scarcity situation that continues to linger in Nigeria, with many queuing for fuel at filling stations. The Nigeria Employers Consultative Association has charged the federal government to unravel the scam surrounding the fuel subsidy and make a pronouncement on a definitive plan to remove it. The
Director General, NECA, Adewale Smart Oyerinde, who said this while addressing journalists in Lagos recently, explained that it was distressing to witness long queues in petrol stations across the country when the government claimed they have paid trillions in petrol subsidy. In his address, Oyerinde noted that 2022 remained one of the most challenging years for the organized private sector, adding that the pandemic-inflicted leadership and sustainability challenges forced organizations to take extraordinary measures.
With a real time, of course, in zero planning. Now, let's look at, joining us to discuss this situation is Barrister Jide Ologun, a public affairs analyst, and he'll be joined to look at this question and this conversation holistically. Good morning, Barrister Jide. Thank you very much for joining us. All right, can you please, would I like you to unmute your microphone? And before we get into the meat of the conversation, share with us, your experience. Every time that we talk about this, we've always had to share how it has been for us in terms of being able to get fuel. Have you experienced such difficulty as well? All right, we will have Barrister Jide join us shortly, but it's important to mention that there has been fuel scarcity and fuel queues. Several conversations have emerged. Earlier, about some 3 weeks ago, the NNPC had said that the availability of product was not the problem, but that it was the lack of sufficient depot to be able to facilitate the accessibility to the average Nigerian. But what is causing this? What is the current situation, and what is the way out? We have joining us this morning Barrister Jide Ologun, who is now here with us. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
All right, I'll start by asking what your experience with buying fuel has been. Do you also face the reality that many Nigerians are facing? Some of us have had to queue to buy fuel. Some of us have had to buy at exorbitant rates to be able to get some fuel into our cars. Is this your experience as well?
Yes, but maybe not as tough as others account, because I'm strategic about it. And there are some filling stations, though their premium price is higher, but they don't sell for those with jerry cans. So it makes it more organized. And I think for me, I just have to make that sacrifice. Well, I can let you know it's a very tough season for Nigerians right now. And it's bad enough for a nation that has overflowing oil and gas as resources and has found it difficult to maximize the benefits, rather turning the asset of the nation to liability. But we keep looking forward to a season of resourceful leadership that we engage our resources to create commonwealth for common good.
Let's talk about, let's talk about why this has become a cycle. It seems that we have 1 month on, another month off. It's become a cycle. Notwithstanding the subsidy payment, Nigerians are still compelled to endure long queues to buy fuel at sometimes a black market rate. We've seen an increase from what used to be 160 naira to 160, 165 naira. It currently sells at about 215, 230, depending on the fuel station, and 500 per litre in the black market. What would you say are some of the reasons that we're here today? The NNPC has given one explanation some weeks back. They said it wasn't availability of product, but it did seem that it was a shortage of depot for a country that is an oil-producing country, but still has to import this. What would you say would be some of the problems before we go to the likely solutions rather?
The basic one is insincerity of public. When you talk about this subsidy that is currently being overflowed, it's a sum of money granted by the state, to help an industry or business keep the price of a commodity or service low. So if, for instance, we have invested heavily in our refineries, by now we should not be talking about subsidizing the price of bringing refined products back to the country, even when we have the resources in abundance. And when you talk about the history of fuel subsidy in Nigeria, it dates back to April 1992, when the then head of state, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, raised the price of a liter of fuel from 15 naira 3 kobo to 20 kobo. You can imagine it was even kobos. And you recall that the price of a liter was around 87 naira 50 kobo before it was jacked up with several promises of reforming the downstream, upstream, and different kinds of promises that have never been fulfilled. So why won't we be where we are today? And don't forget, rather than building more refineries and making our refineries effective, it has become a wastage conduit. At the time, the NNPC declared that about 100 billion naira was spent on turning around moribund refineries. So you find this insincerity of purpose, you find corruption, you find mismanagement of resources. Recently, we were shocked with the news coming from NNPC that Nigerians consume about 66 million liters of fuel on a daily basis. In fact, the former governor of CBN, Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, had to scream that, are we drinking fuel? So when you find all these, you can just imagine that we shouldn't be searching far for why we are in the serious crisis we are today. And again, you recall one of the major challenges we have here is our oil theft. And when these oil thieves are making so much money, then they may not even want the facilities to operate. And I dropped that on the table of the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Muhammadu Buhari, who himself is the substantive Minister of Petroleum Resources in this country. This is so. There's likely to have been a gang up against the nation to impoverish this nation. Recently, an investigation by the Senate committee, came up with a shocking analysis that the nation's economy has lost about $2 billion, equivalent of 1.3 trillion naira, to oil theft between January and August this year. And back to my position on corruption. I mean, how else do you describe the fact that a vessel was arrested with stolen oil from Nigeria and set ablaze on the ocean? And so who are the guys who decided to set that ablaze? Are they accomplices? So there is currently a gang up against Nigeria. And that is why, again, as a matter of irony, a nation so rich in natural resources has about 133 million citizens within the multi-dimensional poverty bracket. And I think that is very appalling, not just to humanity, but also before God.
Let's talk about oil theft. You mentioned that, and I'm glad that you highlighted that, because it's a challenge that we've suffered as a country and as a nation. There were reports last month that there were about 22 suspected oil thieves and 2 vessels handed over to the EFCC by the Nigerian Navy. There have also been conversations about who these people are. Now, there have been claims that the people who are involved in this oil theft, which is now an organized crime, are known. Are we ever going to see a public naming and shaming, a public prosecution of a lot of these forces that are behind these organized crime? And did they ever come when we see an end to oil theft in the magnitude with which it's been employed in Nigeria?
That is if the government is not compromising. We are talking about handing over suspects to EFCC. What about the over 400 sponsors of Boko Haram that the Attorney General of the Federation declared and confirmed by the Minister of Information and Culture that have been identified by the government? How many of them have been prosecuted? How many of them have been named? So, and that is a direct collision with the provision of Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, that says that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. So you may find Nigeria in a situation where the criminals in court are the ones highly influential, untouchable. You see, look at the way bandits are operating, and it's like there are some high-profile non-state actors even driving advocacy for the success of banditry in the country. So I doubt if we are serious about fighting corruption. I doubt if we are serious about restoring prosperity to this land. In the UAE, 6 sponsors of Boko Haram were identified by the government, and 6 were arrested, prosecuted, and jailed. Dubai is not the direct victim of Boko Haram. So I think it's a disturbing development that the people who probably should be protecting us may be behind the exposure we have, making us vulnerable to poverty and different forms of hardship. As we speak today, you know that the inflation rate in the country is above 22%. The unemployment rate is about 33%. The total indebtedness is about 44 trillion naira. Far away from about 12.12 trillion naira that it was in March 2015. So where exactly are we heading? See, so, and it may be collectively that my nation, if personified, falls into the template of a character in Proverbs 12:27. Proverbs 12:27 says, "A lazy man doesn't roast his game, but to a diligent man, his wealth is precious." There are countries of the world who have benefited their citizens enormously through the wealth of oil and gas. We talk about Saudi Arabia, you talk about the UAE I just mentioned, you talk about America. United States of America has about 130 functional refineries, and they are still adding more. You see, so, and I just wonder why God has blessed us so much, and we have become so lazy, let's face the reality, to maximize this wealth, rather go borrowing and encumbering the future of the country. And for a wise leadership, you must secure the future and not mortgage it. So that is where we are now.
Now, there, of course, have been several conversations. On the one hand, we hear conversations about the depots drying up. We also have heard weeks back about how the NNPC did say that there was enough product. It was just, the ability to dispense same to Nigerians. In January, we're hearing that there would be a massive supply in January. So it does seem, January, of course, is in just 3-4 days, and it will be officially January. What are the hopes as we count down to the general elections coming in a few weeks? What are the hopes that the ills of this current administration that are reflected in, our oil problems? What are the hopes that it will be corrected with the incoming government in 2023?
I cannot hold brief for this regime because, there have been several promises unfulfilled. But let me say this. Let's use the precedence of importing contaminated fuel into this country. Have we gotten any clear clue about those behind it? It's been, blame trading and promises and promises. And if this regime wants to go down in history as the regime with all the calamities that has befallen the nation, so be it. But the president promised that he will leave a more secure Nigeria, and I think he has less than 9 months to surrender now. So let's see how it goes, whether they are going to, you keep hearing we have enough stock, we have this, but the marketers are groaning. What is the cost of foreign exchange? What's the cost of dollar? Is it available? The aviation practitioners are crying foul that their money is stuck within the system. We know what is going on, the fiscal monetary policies. And so we should keep hope alive. They say when there is life, there is hope. But on making life meaningful for the citizens of this nation, this government still has a lot to do. But like I said, I cannot hold brief for them whether the situation will improve, or perhaps it may even become an instrument of throwing the society into chaos. Because some are still of the perception that some top-ranking Nigerians may not want an election. As we speak now, despite the promise of security, people have been abducted and killed in some parts of the country. How many of those who kidnapped people in the train between Kaduna and Abuja after killing many have been brought to the public, that we have arrested this number of suspects? So these are issues. I pray that this regime doesn't go down in history, a criminal regime, by reckoning and by perception, given all the evils that have befallen the nation. Because what I know is that in Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, the Constitution says that the security and the welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. So when you are benchmarking and evaluating performance, you use that primary purpose, security and welfare. So how are we faring as a nation right now?
I'm sure that that's a question that most people in Nigeria will be able to answer if we go into the streets and ask them. Well, we are holding on to hope. The national controller operations of IPMAN, Mike Osatui, has said that if they're working on an arrangement that would enable Nigerians to be able to access petrol at the price of 118 naira to the liter by January, if all else, everything falls according to plan. So we're going to love to have you again. Join us as we analyze the stories.
87 naira in 2015 to 180. Oh, kudos.
I guess that's just the reality of what we're facing now in Nigeria and around the world.
Created because we have not maximized our resources. We need resourceful leadership.
Right. All right, Barrister Osatui, Barrister, we'd like to have you join us again. We'll look forward to having more conversations about this. Mr. Ologun, thank you very much for your time with us this morning.
Thank you. God bless Nigeria.